His name was Robert, 53 years old, veteran, homeless for 6 years, and on November 3, 1977, he did something desperate. He spent his last $8 on a Tonight Show ticket, not because he was a fan of Johnny Carson, but because for 2 hours, he wanted to sit in a warm room where people were happy, where nobody would yell at him or look through him like he was invisible. He just wanted to remember what it felt like to be human. Robert didn't plan on being noticed. He sat in the back, trying to disappear. But halfway through the show, a camera panned across the audience and caught something unexpected. A homeless man with tears running down his face, watching Johnny Carson like he was watching hope itself. Johnny saw it on the monitor, saw Robert, saw the pain. And in that moment, Johnny made a choice that would cost NBC thousands in lost production time, violate every protocol in the handbook, and prove that sometimes the most important thing you can do is stop everything and see someone who's been invisible for too long. November 3, 1977, a Thursday night in Burbank, California. The Tonight Show was taping as usual. Johnny was on fire. The monologue killed. The audience was loving it. Everything was running like clockwork. Robert Mitchell sat in row 12, seat 7. As far back as he could get, as invisible as possible. He'd showered at a shelter that morning, put on the cleanest clothes he could find, a donated suit jacket that didn't quite fit, pants that were too short, shoes with holes he tried to hide. He'd saved for 3 weeks to afford that ticket. $8. Every penny he'd collected from strangers who usually looked away. The ticket wasn't about seeing celebrities. It wasn't about Johnny Carson's jokes. It was simpler than that. Robert just wanted to be warm, to sit somewhere clean, to be in a room where people were laughing instead of screaming. For 2 hours, he wanted to remember what normal felt like. Robert Mitchell hadn't always been homeless. 6 years earlier, he'd been someone completely different. He'd served in Vietnam, 2 tours, came back with medals, nightmares, and injuries nobody could see. PTSD wasn't really a diagnosis back then. The VA called it adjustment issues and gave him some pills that didn't work. He'd tried to keep it together, got married, had a job at a factory, but the nightmares got worse. The flashbacks started happening during the day. He'd be at work and suddenly he was back in the jungle, and someone was dying, and he couldn't stop it. His wife left, said she couldn't watch him fall apart anymore. The factory let him go after he missed too many days. The pills ran out and he couldn't afford more. The descent happened faster than anyone would believe. Job gone, apartment gone, car gone, family gone. And suddenly Robert was sleeping under a freeway overpass with a rolled-up jacket for a pillow. 6 years of that. 6 years of being invisible. People looked through him like he was a ghost. Store owners told him to move along. Kids threw things. Cops woke him up in the middle of the night and told him he couldn't sleep there, even though he had nowhere else to go. The worst part wasn't the hunger or the cold. It was the invisibility. The feeling that he'd stopped being a person, that he'd become a problem to avoid, a thing to step around. Until November 3, 1977. The night Robert decided to try feeling human again. Getting into the studio had been easier than Robert expected. He'd cleaned up as best he could, stood in line with the other ticket holders. The security guard barely looked at him. Inside, the studio was warm, bright, clean. The seats were comfortable. The air smelled like hairspray and coffee instead of garbage and exhaust. Robert sat down in his assigned seat and felt something he hadn't felt in years: relief. The show started. Johnny came out, the audience applauded, and for the first time in 6 years, Robert was just another person in a room full of people. Not homeless, not a veteran, not a problem. Just someone watching a TV show. He didn't realize he was crying until the woman next to him moved her purse away from him. That's when Robert understood. He still looked different, smelled different. The shower hadn't been enough. The borrowed suit didn't fit right. People around him were uncomfortable. They could tell he didn't belong. Robert tried to make himself smaller, tried to disappear again, But the tears kept coming. Not sad tears, not really. Just the overwhelming feeling of being warm and safe and almost human again, even if it was only for 2 hours. Johnny was about 30 minutes into the show, interviewing some actress Robert didn't recognize, making jokes. The audience was laughing. Camera 2 did a slow pan across the audience. Standard operating procedure. Show people smiling, laughing, having a good time. Make the folks at home feel like they're part of it. But when the camera reached row 12, the camera operator saw something that made him pause. A man crying. Not happy tears, deep, painful tears. A man who looked completely out of place, but completely transfixed by what he was seeing on stage. The director noticed it in the control room. Cut to that camera. Let it linger for just a moment. And Johnny, who was famous for watching the monitors even while interviewing guests, saw it too. He saw Robert. Really saw him. Johnny stopped talking mid-sentence. The actress looked confused. Ed McMahon looked over, concerned. "Excuse me for just a second," Johnny said to the actress. Then he stood up and walked off the stage. The audience didn't know what was happening. The actress didn't know what was happening. NBC executives watching from the control room definitely didn't know what was happening. Johnny walked up the audience steps, straight to row 12, straight to Robert. He sat down in the empty seat next to him. "Hey there," Johnny said quietly. "You okay?" Robert couldn't speak, couldn't process that Johnny Carson was sitting next to him, that Johnny Carson was talking to him like he was a person. "What's your name?" Johnny asked. "Robert," he managed to say. "Robert Mitchell." "Robert, good name. You a veteran, Robert?" Robert nodded. "Vietnam, 2 tours." Johnny nodded slowly. "Thank you for your service." Those 5 words, 5 simple words Robert hadn't heard in years, made him cry harder. The audience was dead silent now. The cameras had found them. 18 million people were watching this moment unfold live on national television. "Can I ask you something, Robert?" Johnny's voice was gentle. "What brings you to the show tonight?" Robert tried to explain, tried to find words for why he'd spent his last $8 on a ticket, why he just wanted to be warm, to be in a room where people were happy. I wanted to feel normal again," Robert said, "just for a little while." Johnny looked at Robert, really looked at him, saw the torn clothes, the weathered face, the eyes that had seen too much. "You are normal, Robert. You're a man who served his country, who's going through a hard time. That's as normal as it gets." Then Johnny did something that no one expected. He stood up and offered Robert his hand. "Come on, come sit on stage with me for a minute." Johnny led Robert onto the Tonight Show stage, in front of the cameras, in front of the audience, in front of 18 million people watching at home. The NBC executives were losing their minds in the control room. This wasn't scheduled. This wasn't planned. This was a homeless man on their stage. This was chaos. But Johnny didn't care. He sat Robert down on the couch where movie stars usually sat, where presidents sat, where the biggest names in entertainment told their stories. And Johnny interviewed Robert Mitchell like he was the most important guest in the world. "Tell me about Vietnam," Johnny said. Robert talked, haltingly at first, then more freely, about the war, about coming home, about how hard it was to adjust, about losing everything. Johnny listened, really listened, asked follow-up questions, treated Robert with the same respect he gave every other guest. "Where are you staying now?" Johnny asked. "Wherever I can," Robert said honestly, "under the freeway mostly." "That's not right," Johnny said. "That's not how we should treat our veterans." The audience applauded, but it wasn't performative applause, it was real. People were crying because they were watching something they'd never seen before, a conversation between 2 human beings, no pretense, no performance. 8 minutes. That's how long Robert was on stage. 8 minutes that cost NBC thousands in lost production time. 8 minutes that violated every television protocol. 8 minutes that changed Robert's life. When the cameras cut to commercial, Johnny kept talking to Robert. Off air. Private. "Robert, I want you to stay after the show. We're going to figure this out." And Johnny meant it. After the taping wrapped, Johnny took Robert to his dressing room, called his assistant, made some phone calls. Within an hour, Johnny had arranged for Robert to stay at a hotel. A nice one. with a real bed, a shower, clean clothes. But Johnny didn't stop there. He called the VA, used his celebrity status to cut through the bureaucratic red tape, got Robert enrolled in programs he'd been trying to access for years: mental health services, job training, housing assistance. Johnny paid for it all, quietly, didn't tell the press, didn't make it a publicity stunt, just helped a man who needed help. "I'm not doing you a favor," Johnny told Robert that night. "I'm just doing what should have been done 6 years ago." The Tonight Show episode aired as scheduled. NBC couldn't cut the Robert segment. It had happened live. Besides, the audience reaction was overwhelming. The switchboard lit up, thousands of calls. People wanted to know how they could help. Organizations reached out, veterans groups, homeless shelters, regular people who were moved by what they'd seen. Robert became, briefly, a symbol, not of homelessness, but of humanity, of how one person seeing another person can change everything. But more importantly, Robert got help. Real help. The VA programs Johnny had gotten him into worked. The mental health treatment addressed his PTSD. The job training led to actual employment. Within 6 months, Robert had an apartment, a job, a life. He stayed in touch with Johnny, sent him a letter every Christmas for 20 years, thanking him, not just for the help, but for seeing him, for treating him like a human being when the rest of the world had decided he wasn't worth noticing. That night changed Johnny too. After Robert, Johnny started paying attention differently to the people in his audience, to the crew members, to the folks who made his show possible but never got recognition. He started using his platform differently, brought attention to veterans' issues, homelessness, mental health. Not in a showy way, just quietly using his influence to help. Years later, someone asked Johnny about the Robert Mitchell episode, why he'd stopped the show, why he'd risked the chaos. Johnny's answer was simple: because he was there, and he needed to be seen. And I had the power to see him. What else was I supposed to do? Robert Mitchell lived another 30 years after that November night, got married again, had grandkids, worked as a counselor helping other veterans navigate the VA system. He never forgot what Johnny did for him. Not the money, not the connections, but the simple act of sitting down next to him and asking his name. "Johnny gave me my life back," Robert said in an interview years later. "Not because he gave me a job or a place to stay, but because he reminded me I was worth talking to, that I mattered. When you're homeless, you forget that. You start believing you're invisible. Johnny proved I wasn't." Johnny died in 2005. Robert was too sick to attend the funeral, but he sent a letter that was read at the memorial service. "Johnny Carson stopped his show for me when nobody else would stop long enough to say hello. He saw me when I was invisible. He treated me like I mattered when I didn't even believe that myself anymore. He saved my life, and he did it not because he had to, but because he believed that's what humans do for each other." Here's what people miss about November 3rd, 1977. It wasn't special because a celebrity helped a homeless person. Rich people help poor people all the time, sometimes genuinely, sometimes for publicity. It was special because Johnny stopped everything. In the middle of a live show, with millions watching, with production schedules and commercial breaks and network executives losing their minds, Johnny stopped, walked into the audience, sat down next to someone everyone else was trying to ignore, and talked to him like he mattered. That's the lesson. Not the charity that came after, but the simple act of seeing someone. We live in a world where people are invisible all the time. The homeless guy on the corner, the janitor cleaning your office, the person serving your food. We look past them, through them, around them. We're all so busy, so focused on our own lives, that we forget to see the people right in front of us. Robert Mitchell taught Johnny Carson something important that night. He taught all of us something important. Being seen, really seen, not just looked at, is one of the most powerful things you can give another human being. It doesn't cost money. It doesn't require fame or influence. It just requires stopping, looking, asking someone's name. Robert spent his last $8 to feel human again. Johnny gave him that and so much more, just by treating him like he mattered. Robert Mitchell died in 2007, 2 years after Johnny. His obituary mentioned his military service, his work helping veterans, his family. But the first line read, "Robert Mitchell, the man Johnny Carson stopped The Tonight Show for, passed away peacefully." That's his legacy, not the homelessness, not the struggle, but the moment when someone saw him, when someone with the power to help actually did. And Johnny's legacy? It's not just the thousands of interviews or the decades of laughs. It's also an 8-minute conversation with a homeless veteran that taught America what it really means to see each other. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is stop what you're doing and acknowledge that the person in front of you matters. Robert needed to be seen. Johnny had the courage to see him. And for 8 minutes on national television, they reminded us all what humanity looks like. If this story moved you, subscribe to this channel. Share it with someone who needs to remember that every person matters. Comment below about a time someone saw you when you felt invisible, or when you took the time to really see someone else. Hit that notification bell for more stories about the moments that remind us what it means to be human. Because in the end, we're all just looking for what Robert was looking for that night: to be warm, to be safe, and to be seen.